Hello, my lovely anatomist and physiologist. Let's finish up this discussion of reproduction by talking about lactation. So, of course, this is sort of that final piece as mammals in our keeping our infants alive. And so when we're talking about the breast tissue, we'll see a piece of a model here, a picture from our model where it's showing a breast and then a breast with the skin dissected. And what you're seeing is that it is primarily adipose tissue. We see the nipple at the center. We see this darker tissue called the areola surrounding that. And this diagram or model, I should say, doesn't really show the internal structure of the mammary glands. So we'll just talk about those a minute. Mammary glands are going to be modified sweat glands. And so, technically you could talk about them in the integumentary system, but because of their job in helping to nourish the infant with milk production, of course, it makes sense to talk about it in the reproductive system. One of the things that I thought was interesting in that book by Dr. Emily Nagoski, Come As You Are, she was talking about the homologous structures. And of course, all body types, all human body types come with nipples. And the discussion there was around it's such an essential part of keeping our species alive that it develops pretty early in the fetal development, right? And so it's just kind of a default structure that's made here. When we talk about the mammary glands, this is housed in the adipose tissue. So the size of the breast tissue doesn't really determine anything about milk production. And in fact, we do see that the breast tissue does develop a little bit with each monthly cycle when we're talking about the ovarian cycle and the production of the estrogens and progesterones. But we really don't see fully functioning mammary glands until during pregnancy. If we look at the structure of the mammary glands, we'll have the alveoli, which are these little open-ended sacs. This is going to contain your milk secreting cells. And then we're going to see that that milk will move into what's called the lactiferous sinus. And the lactiferous sinus will empty into the lactiferous ducts. And those ducts are going to be openings at the nipple. And we'll see there's about 15 to 20 of these ducts per nipple. So it's not like the nipple maybe on the artificial baby bottle where there's just like that one hole in the tip, where we have 15 to 20 little tiny holes that are here. And what we'll see again is we're getting some development of the breast tissue with each cycle, with the release of estrogen and progesterone that can cause some swelling and tenderness associated with those ovarian cycles, but we're not really seeing fully functional mammary glands until pregnancy. When we talk about the milk ejection reflex, let me rewrite that. I'm getting a little sloppy here. You all are thinking like getting milk ejection reflex. What we see here is a positive feedback mechanism where the infant will suck on the nipple. That is going to trigger a nerve impulse. The nerve impulse is sent to the neurohypophysis, which is going to release the hormone oxytocin, which we can abbreviate OXT. Now, oxytocin is going to cause constriction of the myoepithelial cells in the lactiferous sinus and ducts in order, let me write the word contraction, in order to get the milk to be released. So as long as the infant is suckling, milk is going to be released. Infant suckles, milk is released. Infant suckles, milk is released, and so on, until the infant is satiated and lets go. Now, when we talk about the very first milk that's being produced, this meaning very first 2 to 3 days after delivery, we can say postpartum. So the very, very beginning. We call this the colostrum. We've mentioned it before. It's going to be super high in proteins. And including in those proteins, you have antibodies. You also have mucin, which is an antiviral. And it's very low in fat. So a lot of time those newborns will lose a little bit of weight because they're not going to get a lot of fat here initially, but they're going to get all this important protein and antibody that's necessary. Now, one of the really cool things about breastfeeding is that hormone oxytocin doesn't just cause contraction of your myoepithelial cells in the lactiferous sinuses and ducts, but also causes contraction of your uterus. Now, that's not super lovely if we're talking about contractions or cramping, but it is super lovely in terms of helping to return that uterus back to its pre-pregnancy size. So we're seeing some significant benefits of nursing infants, especially early on. And sometimes it's hard to sustain after that. Just like all things of the body, sometimes it works like the textbook says, and sometimes it doesn't. But that's why it's always good to try. After that initial period of 2 to 3 days, we'll hear it described as your milk comes in. And when we do talk about milk, we see that there's actually 2 types that's being produced. So what we call the fore milk is going to be super watery. It's going to have lots of electrolytes. It's going to have a lot of sugar. And we'll see this is maybe like the first 15 minutes of that infant sucking to release the fore milk. And so this is like really just satisfying thirstiness. And then after about that 15-minute period of time, the infant, if they continue to stay latched on and sucking, they'll get to the good stuff. This is called the hind milk, and this is super high in lipids. And this is going to be essential for that infant to gain weight. Sometimes infants will like latch on the breast and then off, and latch on and latch off, and just kind of get that initial thirstiness taken care of, but not stay on the breast long enough to get to the hind milk. Sometimes parents are really exhausted and really tired, and they don't sit still long enough for the infant to really get to that hind milk. So it's important to, allow the infant a good amount of time on each breast so that the infant is going to not only satiate thirst, but also get that important lipid that's necessary in terms of weight gain. Going back to fore milk, I forgot to list proteins. That's super important component here. So make sure that you're adding that in as well. All right, y'all, I have one more video for us to sort of summarize the hormones of the female body type. So stay tuned. As always, take care of yourselves and each other.